On the morning of June 19, 1944, the Pacific promised more than just another ordinary battle. This day would determine the fate of the skies. Approximately 400 Japanese aircraft, carrying the Empire's last hopes, took off from their aircraft carriers. Within a few hours, the legend of the Mitsubishi A6M0, once the terror of the Pacific, would be extinguished in a blaze of fire and smoke. Subscribe for more untold World War II stories. Facing them was a new fighter, the Grumman F6F Hellcat, backed by the overwhelming support of American industry and naval power. What unfolded was not a battle, but a massacre. It was the day Japanese naval aviation was irrevocably destroyed. When the Pacific War began, the skies belonged to Japan. The A6M0 was a weapon of terror, a sleek and impossibly agile fighter that could outmaneuver anything the Allies could field. At Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, and the Coral Sea, the Zero became a phantom that seemed immune to bullets. For American pilots in their stubby, underpowered Grumman F4F Wildcats, combat was an exercise in desperation. The Zero climbed faster and turned tighter. The only viable tactic was a high-speed diving pass, followed by a desperate escape. The Zero's mystique was both technical and psychological. Lacking armor or self-sealing fuel tanks, it was a fragile machine. Yet its performance gave its veteran pilots an aura of invincibility. For the first years of the war, the Pacific sky was painted red by Japanese dominance. It was clear that courage wasn't enough. America needed a new weapon to survive. By mid-1942, engineers at Grumman were already designing the Zero's antithesis. Based on harrowing combat reports, they developed a new philosophy. Forget trying to match the Zero's agility. The new fighter would be a bruiser, faster, tougher, and armed to the teeth. The result was the F6F Hellcat. The Hellcat was survival, given wings. Its cockpit was armored, its fuel tanks were self-sealing, and its wings carried 6.5 zero-caliber Browning machine guns. Powered by a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine, it was designed to take hits and keep flying. It forgave the mistakes of rookie pilots and gave veterans the power to dominate. But the aircraft was only one part of the equation. Behind the Hellcat stood the colossal weight of American industry. While Japan struggled to replace a few dozen aircraft a month, U.S. factories churned them out by the thousands. Critically, the human factor was decisive. By 1944, Japanese pilot training had been gutted by fuel shortages, forcing cadets into combat with as little as 50 flight hours. In contrast, American aviators logged over 300 hours before ever seeing combat. The war was no longer about individual skill, it had become a war of systems, and America's war machine was unstoppable. As 1944 unfolded, the strategic spotlight turned to the Mariana Islands. Saipan, Tinian, and Guam were not just islands, they were unsinkable aircraft carriers. Control of them meant control of the air bases needed for B-29 Superfortress bombers to strike the Japanese homeland. Knowing this, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa gathered Japan's remaining naval strength, 9 carriers and roughly 400 aircraft for a decisive counterstrike. His force was fragile, filled with inexperienced pilots flying outdated planes. Across the sea, America's Task Force 58 loomed like a floating fortress. Commanded by Admirals Raymond Spruance and Mark Mitcher, it was the most powerful naval force ever assembled. 15 fast carriers with nearly 1,000 aircraft, supported by a fleet of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. It was a machine designed to grind any enemy into dust. At dawn on June 19th, the horizon to the west of Task Force 58 blackened. The first Japanese wave of nearly 80 aircraft appeared on radar. Hellcats were hurled from their catapults to meet them. American commanders issued a simple, brutal order. Boom and zoom. Don't turn with them. Strike hard, climb away, and live to strike again. The Hellcats dove into the swarm, their guns tearing the Japanese formations apart. Zeros and bombers blossomed into fireballs. The inexperience of the Japanese pilots was immediately apparent. Their formations broke under the first assault. By 10:30 a.m., the first wave was shattered. 3 more waves followed, each one a testament to Japanese desperation. The second wave of 120 aircraft was met with the same brutal efficiency. The third wave consisted of boys barely out of flight school, many unable to even hold formation. The fourth and final wave was a collection of scraps, training planes and obsolete bombers, anything Japan could get into the air. They were all annihilated. By the end of the day, the sky was quiet, save for the pillars of smoke rising from the sea below. In a matter of hours, nearly 400 Japanese aircraft had been destroyed. American losses were fewer than 30 planes. The lopsided engagement would later be nicknamed, with grim humor, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. It wasn't just a victory, it was the obliteration of Japanese naval aviation. The battle for the skies over the Pacific, which had begun with the terrifying dominance of the Zero, had ended in a decisive, one-sided slaughter. Japan would never again be able to mount a significant carrier-based air attack for the remainder of the war.